delighted to welcome her, delighted to hear her story, and thank you very much indeed. Over to Miranda.
Thanks everyone. I hope you're having a great morning so far. I think a very tough act to follow, some fantastic speakers this morning, but I think there's a certain thread that binds everything together, so hopefully what I'll talk about you'll be able to see sort of some common themes coming through. So my name's Miranda and I'm here to sort of talk to you about what we did at the NHS BSA, moving really from crisis to recovery, so that's a bit I'll try and focus on. I'll give you some context about who we are, what our vision is for colleague engagement, who we are, what we do, and really focus on primarily activity that's happened over the last 12 months or so. As I said, moving from the pandemic to recovery and to living with COVID-19. I'll cover how we've involved our colleagues, what the results of that have been, what our plans look like for the future, what our focus is going to be on, and then I'm happy to take questions afterwards if we've got time. If not, come and find me afterwards. I'm around for the rest of the afternoon. So, who are we? Well, we're an arm's length body of the Department of Health and Social Care, so ultimately we are an NHS body, but we're ultimately responsible to the DHSC. The bullet points are a snapshot of what we do, so in terms of we're a support service nationally for the NHS. We deliver services that support workforce primary care, millions of UK citizens. We have a lot of healthcare information and data, and we manage around 39 billion of NHS spend annually, which is quite a lot of money. We sort of specialise in big scale, big numbers, and of course data analysis and collaboration. We employ around 3,500 people. We've got offices in Newcastle, Manchester, Wakefield, Eastbourne and Sheffield. In terms of our operational services, you may know of some of these, you may not. So we have student services. We start right from the person's journey when they're looking at starting with the NHS and providing student loans, grants, etc. And we fund students through their professional training. We then help people get jobs through our NHS Jobs platform. We manage the electronic staff record, which is the largest centralised HR and payroll system in the world. That's got over 1.8 million staff records, and it allows NHS organisations to pay the staff on time. And we also provide HR shared services, and we've got 3 million members of the NHS pension scheme, so you can see big at-scale services. Dental services, so we've got 43.6 million dental claims we process and 1 billion prescription items. We then reimburse pharmacists and dentists for the treatment that they provide to patients and the medicines. Provider assurances around contract management, effective contract management, and we also do scanning services for NHS trusts so that they can save time and money and space. In terms of our citizen services, we have a customer operations centre which manages millions of customer queries across several call streams around all these. We have exemption services, so we support members of the public in gaining access to healthcare services and the help to health costs to which they're entitled. So exemption services including maternity, low income. We also provide free prescriptions or free dentistry. We also check those exemptions to make sure that only people who are entitled to claim are claiming. And we also provide overseas healthcare services, which is your GHIT card. You may remember the old EHIT cards and then the move to global. So I just want to talk on a little bit about our purpose, vision and values, because this is important for us when we talk about connecting our colleagues to the organisation. So our purpose is to be a catalyst for better health, and when we sort of suggested this a few years ago, right, so everyone's like, it's taken a few years for everyone to really understand what it means and be embedded, but it means we work in collaboration with our partners, our stakeholders and our customers, and that's across the health and care system. So we try new things, we try innovative ways of working, and our vision is to be the delivery partner of choice for the health and care system. Our values are collaborative, adventurous, reliable and energetic, and hopefully you'll notice they spell out the word care, and this is important because this is what gets played back to us in some of our feedback. And we developed these around 4 years ago with our people for our people. And in terms of our people, it's one of the strategic goals in our business strategy. People are critical to our success. We describe that as being around creating a fantastic colleague experience where people can be their best with an eye to future needs and being a great inclusive place to work. And I think those are some of the themes that we've already touched on today, so hopefully this draws some of those conversations together as well. In terms of how we measure our engagement with our colleagues, we do have a measure in our strategy which is working towards an improvement in our overall engagement score, which I'm delighted to say that we achieved this year. Last year when we were surveyed in October, and that comprises all 8 factors of engagement according to Best Companies. So we've already talked a bit about Best Companies, who did the Sunday Times Top 100 Companies to Work For. So the factors that they measure are leadership, my company, my manager, personal growth, my team, wellbeing, fair deal, which is paying rewards and giving something back, so corporate social responsibility. And we've been with Best Companies for about 3 years now. We have a communications and marketing strategy. That's one of the supporting strategies for our business strategy, and that's got a big focus on internal comms and engagement. And through that, we want to help people feel connected, connect colleagues to leadership, make sure people have opportunities to feedback what they think about the business, and also be involved in decision making. And we also want to be an employer of choice and attract and retain talent. And I'll talk about that a bit later on, because we've already heard some things about what a competitive marketplace it is at the moment, how tough it is out there to recruit. So I'll talk about that a bit later. So in terms of what we learnt from the pandemic, just against everything that I've just said, I just wanted to share our experience of what we've learned and then cover how we've changed and adapted things moving forward. So we set 3 objectives first of all, which was the health, safety and wellbeing of all our people. That was absolutely critical to us. We repeated it on all our communications. And then our second objective was to keep our business critical services functioning, so I'm paying doctors, dentists, etc., making sure NHS staff were paid, so all those critical payment services. And then finally, we actually stood up almost 50 new services to support the national effort to fight against the pandemic. So things like text messaging, we help with contact tracing, we set up a contact centre, so a huge range of services that we set up. But we recognised that, you know, our staff were absolutely critical, so we put in place additional wellbeing measures and we promoted the support available to our colleagues. So back in March 2020, as you'll remember, we actually sent around 3,000 of our workforce home, and most of those now are still working from home. There were a number of challenges, so we've mainly got over the physical, which I'm sure everyone will, you know, recall new kit, new technology. Everyone's moving on to Microsoft Teams. It was a new working environment. But people are still struggling a bit, and people are still a bit apprehensive about coming back into the workplace. We had 500 colleagues who had to stay in our offices to carry out business critical activities. And at the beginning of April, we decided to open our offices fully up. We've relaxed all our social distancing measures, but we've also got additional cleaning still in place. And we're actually introducing lanyards for people if they want to be recognised as, you know, just to keep your distance from them. So we're trying to think around that if, you know, people are uncomfortable in the office, uncomfortable with seeing other people, but also how we kind of get through that. I touched on we surveyed in October 2021, and for the second year running, we maintained our 2-star accreditation with Best Companies, which I think we all thought it would go down. So the first year, sort of the year before, was our first 2-star accreditation. And then we got a second 2-star accreditation. We actually increased our engagement score as well, which was fantastic. And this is the feedback from our colleagues. So many people feel proud and honoured to work for the NHS BSA. They say we do great things to benefit a wide variety of people. We're also integral to the response to the pandemic. So that made many people proud to say that they've been able to do their bit during that time. And so you can see that our colleagues really do understand the purpose of the NHS BSA and how they can contribute to the success, and also supporting the frontline NHS, which was what the pandemic, you know, what our role in the pandemic was about. Our people told us the leadership team are visible, they're approachable, and they do a good job in communicating the future vision. Most people felt the direct team members offer an amazing support network. They told us we need to focus on teams and departments working together, so trying to get rid of that silo mentality, and also paying rewards, which is quite difficult. Oops, sorry, skipped a bit. For us to do as a public sector organisation. So we have to think a bit creatively about how we can do that differently. But I think just a final point on this slide about what our people told us. Most of people felt that we really do care when it comes to mental health and well-being. They asked for it to become a continued focus going forward, because that had been a significant contributing factor to making the last 18 months a little bit easier to deal with. And when your staff are saying that, you know you're doing something right if you're making their working lives a bit easier in that sort of sense. So, in terms of what we did next from crisis to recovery, we know that a number of things we did during the pandemic worked really well, and so we decided to continue with some of these, but then adapt some others because we're in a different environment over the last sort of 12 months. As I've said, we know the continued focus, supporting our people and their well-being worked really well, so we made a conscious decision we're going to continue that because of the positive impact and feedback we were seeing. So communications and marketing team, we work really closely with the people team, so that's HR, wellbeing and inclusion, and our colleague networks, which are really a fundamental part of our organisation to promote various initiatives to help people feel safe, supported and well. So, as I mentioned earlier, our values are care, so we do try and bring that into our initiatives and what we're doing. So one of the things we did was set up We Care cafes. So those are cafes that are run weekly. They're for colleagues. They're based on colleague themes and feedback and health and wellbeing trends. And they're a safe space for colleagues to share experiences. I mentioned our networks. They run irregular sessions on various topics. So domestic abuse, wellbeing, menopause, mental health, disability and neurodiversity, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, LGBTQ+, and also women. We introduced a new bereavement process, and that was including an online book of condolence, and we held special cafes for our colleagues to come together to remember colleagues who they'd lost. And then we also held our first long COVID cafe recently, because it's only recently we're starting to see the impacts of that on our colleagues, and how many people are suffering with that in the organisation. So our networks allow colleagues to act as a support network for one another, be a critical friend to us as a business, help identify issues and barriers in relation to policies and practices, promote learning. We talked about being visible role models across the business as well earlier. And then as part of our wellbeing calendar, we've got a series of awareness sessions, as you can see on the slide, and these have been really well received by colleagues. We also talked earlier about hybrid working, so we as an organisation are offering hybrid working. That's depending on business need, and we have a programme called Our Way Ahead. Now that started off gathering thoughts of over 1,000 colleagues, so that's over a third of our staff to inform that decision. And so we focus that programme now on 3 different areas. So that's enhancing our colleague experience, to look at talent attraction, retention. Gary, you were saying your colleague was talking about sort of purposefully designed workspaces, collaboration areas. Happy to speak afterwards about what we're doing in that space. So we're looking at that in terms of our buildings, what are our learning spaces, what are our workspaces looking like, and also developing our leaders and managers so that they're well equipped to lead and manage in a hybrid workplace. We also recognised our previous reward and recognition scheme didn't work anymore because most people are now doing things online. So we launched a We Care colleague recognition scheme, so colleagues can nominate each other or a team for categories relating to our values. And then we've also got monthly awards as well. So you can also send a star to a colleague, which is a really nice idea, just saying thank you, congratulations. It can be under one of our values, or it can be, congratulations. And we're also working on an annual awards ceremony as well. In some of our other initiatives to try and create an inclusive workforce, we've got a shadow board. So that's got members from each of our lived experience networks, as I outlined earlier. And they meet before the main board. They provide constructive criticism, challenge as a critical friend, and then 2 members join the main board to represent their colleagues. This year we've also introduced a Let's Talk About Race programme. So this encourages teams to have conversations about race, talk about each other's experiences, and I think it was Gifty was talking earlier about unconscious bias, and so we're looking at our improving our recruitment processes. So one of the things that we've done is introduce diverse panels, and that's to support with improving recruitment, selection, career progression, particularly of our BAME and female colleagues. And we're also looking at language in our job adverts to ensure that there aren't any barriers to applicants too. During the pandemic, we provided regular updates from our incident director. Those were initially daily. We moved from, we then moved them to 3 times a week, and then we dropped them to weekly. And those were mainly about the pandemic and what people needed to do, what action they needed to take to keep themselves safe. But they've moved on now because we know colleagues need something different in the move to living with COVID-19. So we've now got a weekly digest, and that keeps people up to date. It's drawn from our intranet site, and it drives traffic there as well. And it also carries the branding of the Our Way Ahead programme, and that signifies the change from crisis to recovery. We've got great many Yammer groups as well. I'm sure a number of you use Yammer. So we've created, I suppose not a bit of a monster there, but there's quite a few Yammer groups. So some are work and team focused, some are open, some are private. We've got special interest groups. And these are starting to create a community of teams across the organisation. And then our chief executive has a fortnightly blog as well, and that goes to all colleagues. It covers topical issues, celebrations, and along with his own personal experience as well, because we're talking about leadership visibility, approachability, and also making people seem human as well, because our leaders are at the end of the day. And finally, in terms of what we did to kind of shift that change from crisis to recovery, one of the things that proved most popular was our leadership team live Q&A sessions. So during the pandemic, these ran fortnightly, and they provided opportunities for colleagues to ask any question they wanted of our leadership team. We've never seen such high levels of two-way engagement, and these were mentioned time and time again in our survey. And we started to move out of crisis. We knew that the sessions needed to change to adapt to changing needs of our workforce. So we asked colleagues what people wanted to see from them, and what frequency they wanted to see them as well. And so based on that feedback, we now have a monthly Teams event. We do a wrap-up session if people can't get to the session afterwards, and if we don't manage to get to all the questions. The sessions are always recorded so people can view them. So we have about 600 people on the live event, and then about 150 playbacks afterwards. We also got quite a few questions in on cost of living, as we talked about earlier, so recognising that was something that was really concerning our colleagues. What can we do as an organisation to help our people? So we had a dedicated session with our wellbeing manager, reward and recognition advisor, and environment manager to look at all things around sort of financial wellbeing, mental health and wellbeing, the environment. So top tips for, sort of saving money, how we can become more effective. And then we also had that as part of a wider campaign, and that was with a dedicated Yammer community set up so people could share ideas as well. You can see a couple of screenshots from our intranet site with that on. In terms of our LT Q&A sessions, I'll just share a few comments from the evaluation. The sessions are evaluated through a survey after each session, and you'll see on one of the comments people are actually sort of playing back our values to us in terms of us actually being a caring organisation. And we also got some negative comments, as you'd expect. You can't please all of the people all of the time, so we have taken that feedback on, and we've adapted our approach. So things like where questions have been repeated in the Q&A, we started pointing people in chat to links on our intranet site, and that seems to run pretty well. So we have, in terms of our evaluation, we ask how easy it is to watch, how likely people are to recommend it, and what topics people would like to see. And we get an average 4.3 out of 5 for those sessions, so that's not too bad. I couldn't not mention we had a visit from the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Sajid Javid, in February as well. He came up to our Newcastle office and he talked to our colleagues on a number of schemes that we run on behalf of the Department of Health and Social Care, including GHIC and how we contribute to the government's levelling up agenda with obviously colleagues in the North East, North West. And he spent about 40 minutes with us. It's probably like the quickest but longest 40 minutes I've ever spent, if that makes sense. He was really enthusiastic about our work, and we did receive some positive feedback from the visit, and it was lovely because he was speaking to staff as well, so it was great that he took the time out to come and see us. And in terms of our accreditations, you can see, I suppose this is evidence of our way of working and the approach we've taken and how it works. So you can see best companies. We also got the top not-for-profit organisation to work for in the UK when we surveyed in October. We got an accreditation, 5th place with Stonewall, the ENEI Tide Gold Standard. You know, we have environment on there as well. So I think that's something that's really important to us, because we genuinely believe that our people are absolutely critical to our success. And I think we want to try and be an inclusive place to work where we feel that everyone can be their best. In terms of what an engaged workforce means for us, so as you can imagine, it's been a bit of a roller coaster for the last couple of years, and the scale of remote working, that's provided new challenges in terms of how we reach and engage with colleagues, but we've also found there's been more opportunities to do that. Greater engagement means we've got more two-way channels of communication, so we can identify issues quicker, take action to address them, and because colleagues feel they're being listened to and valued, they work with greater pride and purpose. I think a couple of things I'd just say: increased leadership visibility has improved our trust levels. There are some stats from the Edelman Trust Barometer. I'm not going to read them all out, but it's really useful to see how there's been a continued shift from trust, going from sort of like government and the media into business, and employees are trusting business more. But it's not only about the trust, it's about businesses want businesses to do more to address societal issues, including climate change, economic inequality, etc., etc. So it goes to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the Gen Z conversation, what attracts people to employees. So next steps for us very quickly, in terms of we want to implement our people strategy. We talked about the competitive marketplace, so we want to position ourselves as an employer of choice. We can't compete on pay really with us being a public sector organisation, so we know that that's where we have to try and make the difference in terms of our reward recognition, our benefits, our wellbeing support and everything like that, because it's about doing the right thing for our colleagues. I know we're short for time, so I will leave it there, but I'm happy to take any questions afterwards. So thank you very much.